Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scripture for December the 8th. Your readings today find you in the book of Joel, chapters 1, 2, and 3, and starting the book of Revelation, chapter 1. We have Psalm 128 and we have Proverbs chapter 29. Now we got two books to introduce, so we're going to go quickly through each one of them. Well, as quick as you can. So, the book of Joel, it's written by the prophet Joel, and it deals a lot with a theme that we see a lot in the Old Testament and, in Revelation, the day of the Lord, which is the day of judgment, the day that God is going to come and is going to finally do what he's been promising to do for millennia. And Joel specifically has to do with locusts, and a lot of conversation when it comes to locusts. But Joel is a beautiful book of yes, God's judgment, but also promises of what God's going to come. God is going to restore and renew. One day the nations will be judged, but this is not something that we should be afraid of, but instead is something that we should embrace and love, and in some ways, be excited about it. So Joel, we're going to see Joel. We'll actually bring up Joel. Joel is going to be a kind of something that's going to happen early, and then we'll see other prophets like Zephaniah, Micah talk about some different things. They're all kind of tied in together in continuations of different things. Now we have the book of Revelation. Now Revelation was written by John. This is the same John that wrote the Gospel of John, that wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. That is the same John. We believe it is, and he is the disciple with whom Jesus loved. Now, why is the book called the book of Revelation? Well, because that's exactly what it is. John was exiled onto the Isle of Patmos, and this is late in his life. We think it's in his late 90s and mid to late 90s, and he gets a vision. And in this vision, he has some visions of present, which we see in the churches, the 7 churches that he talks about, but we also see the day of the Lord. Hey, that sounds familiar. And prophecies of what is to come. But these are things that were given by Christ himself, according to verse 1. This is not something that John made up. This is not something that John took lightly. Instead, it was a heavy burden for him. But he sends these off so that people might know and be prepared and be ready. The idea is to bless the man who reads, hears, and obeys this message. Now, we know Revelation is heavy, it's deep, and there are a number of differing views on how one should read Revelation. I've talked about this before. I'll talk about it again in the coming days. I believe in an historical, literal reading, which means that I'm going to read it as if it is actual history that has happened. I'm going to read it as it is literal until I can't read it literally anymore. And Revelation is one of those books where there's frankly a lot of things that one cannot read literally. However, you might be like, well, I don't really know what to believe. Am I going to believe the premillennial view, the amillennial view? What do even those even mean? And so here is a book that I recommend that you pick up. It's not a thick book, but it's a basic guide to eschatology by Millard J. Erickson. This is not a new book, meaning that it's not exactly a book that's been written in the last couple of years, but it doesn't have to be. This book was written, honestly, my goodness, the latest edition of it was written like 25 years ago. But it still has excellent views on those eschatological positions, as in the millennial views, the tribulational views. These are ones that I recommend that you read and get a little bit of an idea and start beginning to form an opinion. Now, here's the other part about it. I'm not going to go too crazy into some of these views. I'm going to read it as I see it because, again, we're daily walking through the scripture. We don't have time in 5 minutes to go as deep as I think any of us would like to do. And also the idea, remember, is we're not to be reading into this so much that we begin to become obsessed with looking for the end times. That does not profit you. It does not profit me. Our job is very simply to be prepared for God to come back at any time. This is not a new concept. We should look at Revelation as a book of encouragement. We can use it as a book of warning, being prepared for the things that potentially could come. And yet, however, big however, do not become so obsessed with this that all you do is look for the end times and the end signs. Paul Peter. These guys thought the end times were coming 2,000 years ago. John does not give us dates. John does not give us some of the issues and things. And so we don't really know when God is going to come back. We just know that we need to be prepared for God to come back. So with that being said, as you dive into Revelation, just know that these first few chapters, these are literal conversations about churches, okay? When it talks about 7 churches, these are churches that existed back then. Not all of them exist today, but we need to be prepared and look and see what it is that these churches were struggling with and what these churches were doing well, so that we, as the church today, can look and live and be prepared for when God does come back. Okay, that's kind of our introduction for today, and we'll dive into it tomorrow.